The moment she glanced at the menu, her smile faded. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a flicker of hesitation, a quiet pause as her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table. But then her eyes lifted, meeting his with something far heavier than embarrassment. It was fear, the kind that comes from living life on the edge, where even a simple dinner feels like a risk you can't afford to take. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, take a second right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Hope Corner. Stories like this remind us what truly matters. The restaurant was warm, filled with soft afternoon light pouring through tall windows, casting golden reflections on polished wooden tables. It was the kind of place people came to celebrate birthdays, promotions, anniversaries. But for Arif Malik, this wasn't about celebration. It was about trying again. Trying to build something after years of loss, responsibility, and silent sacrifices. Across from him sat Meher Zaid, a woman who carried herself with quiet strength. Her dress was simple, her hair loosely tied back, and there was a natural honesty in her face that made Arif feel strangely at ease. They had met only a week ago at a small community library, both reaching for the same book, both laughing awkwardly when their hands touched. That moment had felt light, effortless, something rare in his life. But now, sitting across from him, Meher looked like she was carrying a storm inside her. She lowered the menu slowly and exhaled, her voice barely above a whisper as she admitted she couldn't afford this date. For a brief second, the world seemed to pause. Around them, waiters moved, glasses clinked, laughter echoed, but at their table, everything stilled. Arif didn't respond immediately. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because he understood too well what those words meant. He had lived them. 5 years earlier, Arif's life had shattered in a single night. His wife had passed away suddenly, leaving him alone with a 2-year-old daughter, Anika, and a mountain of responsibilities he had never prepared for. Grief had no schedule, no warning. It came in waves, while feeding his daughter, while folding tiny clothes, while sitting in silence after she fell asleep. Money had been tight. There were nights he skipped meals so Anika could have hers. Days he walked miles to save on bus fare. He had learned to stretch every rupee, to prioritize survival over comfort, to carry the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders without complaint. So when Meher said she couldn't afford the date, Arif didn't hear embarrassment. He heard truth. He saw himself. Instead of reacting with surprise or discomfort, he leaned back slightly, studying her expression, not with judgment, but with understanding. Her eyes were downcast now, clearly expecting disappointment, maybe even rejection. But Arif's response wasn't what she expected. He closed the menu gently and smiled, not a forced smile, but a calm, reassuring one that carried years of quiet resilience. Then, without making a scene, he suggested something simple. They didn't need this place. They could go somewhere else. Something easier. Something real. At first, Meher hesitated. Pride and vulnerability battled silently within her. But there was something in Arif's tone, something steady and sincere, that made her nod. They left the restaurant together, stepping out into the warm afternoon sunlight. The shift was immediate. The air felt lighter, freer, as if the weight of expectations had been left behind at that table. Arif led the way down a quiet street, not toward another expensive cafe, but toward a small roadside food stall tucked between 2 old buildings. It wasn't glamorous. There were plastic chairs, a faded umbrella, and the comforting smell of freshly cooked street food. To Arif, it felt like home. They sat down, ordered 2 simple meals, and for the first time since the date began, Meher smiled without hesitation. It wasn't just about the food. It was about being seen. As they ate, the conversation slowly began to unfold. At first, it was light, small talk, shared laughter, little observations about the world around them. But gradually, something deeper emerged. Meher spoke about her life, about growing up in a household where money was always scarce, where every expense was questioned, where she had learned early on to hide her struggles behind a brave face. She had worked hard, built a life for herself, but the fear of not having enough had never truly left her. Arif listened quietly, not interrupting, not offering quick solutions. Just listening. Then, when the moment felt right, he shared his own story. He told her about Anika. About the sleepless nights. About the fear of failing as a father. About the countless times he had doubted himself but kept going because he had no other choice. Meher's eyes softened as she listened. There was no pity in her gaze, only respect. In that small, unassuming place, something shifted between them. It wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. After they finished eating, Arav did something unexpected. Instead of ending the date there, he asked Meher if she had time for one more stop. Curiosity flickered in her eyes, and she agreed. They walked for about 15 minutes, the city slowly changing around them, busy streets giving way to quieter neighborhoods, tall buildings replaced by modest homes. Eventually, they stopped in front of a small park. Children were playing, laughter filling the air. And there, near the swings, stood a little girl with bright eyes and messy hair, trying to climb up on her own. Arav called out softly, and the girl turned instantly, her face lighting up as she ran toward him. That was Anika. The moment was simple but powerful. Meher watched as Arav knelt down, embracing his daughter with a warmth that spoke louder than words. The way he looked at her, the way he brushed her hair aside, the way he smiled, it revealed a side of him that no restaurant ever could. Then Arav introduced them. There was a brief moment of awkwardness, but it quickly melted away as Anika, curious and cheerful, began chatting with Meher like they had known each other forever. Meher knelt down, meeting the child at eye level, her earlier hesitation completely gone. In that moment, something inside her shifted again, not just about Arav, but about herself. She realized this wasn't a man trying to impress her with money or appearances. This was a man offering honesty. Responsibility. A life that was real, imperfect, but deeply meaningful. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the three of them sat together on a park bench. It wasn't planned. It wasn't polished. But it felt complete. Arav hadn't tried to hide his struggles. He had shown them. And somehow, that made everything stronger. Before they parted ways, Meher looked at him differently, not with uncertainty, but with clarity. The kind that comes when illusions fade and truth stands quietly in front of you. Days turned into weeks, and what began as an awkward moment at a restaurant slowly grew into something deeper. They met again, sometimes at the same roadside stall, sometimes at the park, sometimes just walking through the city, talking about life. There were no expectations, no pressure to be perfect. Just presence. Just understanding. And slowly, trust. Meher began to open up more, letting go of the fear that had held her back for so long. Arav, in turn, allowed himself to hope again, not just for himself, but for the possibility of building something new for Anika. It wasn't easy. There were doubts, difficult days, moments when the past tried to pull them back. But they kept choosing to move forward. Together. If this story has touched your heart even a little, take a moment right now to like, comment, and share this video. Your support helps stories like this reach people who truly need them. And before we reach the end, I want to ask you something special. Comment below with the word hope if you believe kindness can still change lives. Because sometimes, it's not grand gestures that transform a moment. It's the quiet ones. The ones where someone chooses understanding over judgment. Kindness over pride. And honesty over illusion. That day, when Meher said she couldn't afford the date, she expected rejection. Instead, she found acceptance. And Arav, a man who had once lost everything, found something he never expected again. A second chance. Not just at love, but at life. And sometimes, that's all it takes, one moment, one choice, one act of kindness, to change everything.